I've recently uploaded a fictional podcast which involves the hosts of Impetus characters Triple J and the recently uprising Cortni. Now, if you haven't paid attention to the dichotomy of Cortni and her group of allies called Immunity, then I suggest you do so because I believe that I've created a very interesting story with a group of friends. The cool thing I like writing about Cortni in the recent episodes especially is her very subtle and vague way of distancing herself from the group. Now, I do want to make it clear that this isn't exactly an instant face turn, nor is it actually involved one specific moment or segment or even match to make you feel as though she's done teaming with her group of friends of Immunity. Rather, she's simply backed away from their agenda, their entire ordeal, their entire identity. She's sort of stepped away from the initial goal that they had because she believes that they're taking their goal a little bit too seriously. Now, Courtney has always been a stuck-up princess that no one likes, much like her girlfriend, known as Angel. And on the Triple J podcast, hosted by Jack Ross and Jimmy Stevens, the seemingly one-dimensional, self-obsessed, popular character of Cortni was revealed to a wider range. Her characteristics were shown a little bit more. Through the podcast, I feel as though I let her gain progression and evolution in her character by venting her desire to compete more in hardcore match stipulations rather than being the bitch on the side. In one 10-minute kayfabe podcast, I believe I turned Courtney's overall persona, her overall presence and atmosphere and attitude from a simple-minded blonde to a well-spoken, opinionated and passionate woman who is seemingly trying to add to her ability as opposed to just add extra makeup onto her face. Not only do I think that this was a great platform to advance Courtney's character, but the podcast video and idea in general is a great way to showcase what Triple J's involvement of the show is as well. It showcases what Triple J's use on Impetus truly is, which is to provide those weekly podcasts in order to build unique character arcs for certain characters. To not only promote Impetus in an entertaining fashion, of course, but to enhance the guests on the show by pushing their buttons with upfront, honest questions that you wouldn't otherwise hear from typical hosts. Now, I understand that a podcast idea isn't exactly an original concept, but I think that this is a great scenario to place characters into, as it allows your commonly loud and colorful personas to be seen in a more chilled atmosphere, seemingly having a genuine chat, which, of course, for Courtney's sake, is extremely important, as I'm trying to subtly and vaguely transition her into more of a babyface. And it can also be used as an opposite goal as well, having a quiet and brooding character actually open up more about their feelings on whatever the topic may be at the time. But to also have Jimmy and Jack, these former radical radio heads, take their chatting ways onto their pranking podcast is not only a poetic step forward for the duo, but again, it allows multiple routes for otherwise stale or even yet to be determined characters to go down. I'm happy with the way that the Triple J podcast went, and I actually want to thank my beautiful girlfriend for being the voice of Cortni. On a side note, it was actually really cool for me to provide my voice actor who played Cortni an actual motivation. Before we recorded, I had to actually explain to my missus the character in which I wanted her to present. What I'd like her to sound like, the way in which she speaks, the attitude I wanted her to display. Explaining a character out loud to someone is so beneficial to not just the script, but to the writer's mind as well, as it forces them to label the mannerisms of a character in the most detailed yet quickest way possible. So go ahead and check out that podcast video and all the Immunity scenes in which leads up to it. I think it's really important, and I actually think it's a really good story, especially for a faction in wrestling. I really think that the Immunity faction is a great addition to the world of wrestling, and to have Courtney slowly fade away from the group is not only an interesting development, but will end up being an awesome payoff.